And now questions with despite. Now, how do we use the word despite? Basically, when we have situations that don't make sense, that don't go together, like even though, right? It's raining, Johnny is still out to play. Okay, let's have a few examples. She failed her driving test 5 times. She was determined to take another test. Hang on, if you fail 5 times, you're probably thinking of giving up, aren't you? Right? But she was determined. So we are using despite. Despite the fact that she failed her driving test 5 times, she was determined to take another test. That's one possible answer. The other one would be, despite failing her driving test 5 times, comma, she was determined to take another test. Another one, despite having failed her driving test 5 times, comma, she was determined to take another test. That's it. Another situation that is unexpected. Let's see. Johan insisted that he had completed all his homework, but his mother did not believe him. So one says A, the other one says B. So despite his insistence, notice what's happening here. We have gone from insist, okay, insisted, the past tense, to the noun form, insistence. Despite his insistence that he had completed all his homework, notice Johan, the name itself, is not mentioned yet. We have to mention Johan, all right? So not his mother, Johan's mother. So despite his insistence that he had completed all his homework, Johan's mother did not believe him. Too bad, the question forces you to use his here. I personally would have written Johan first, despite Johan's insistence. Okay, question 3. Tiffany was innocent even though everyone thought she was the culprit. So despite the fact that Tiffany was innocent, comma, everyone thought she was the culprit. Rachel is disabled. She is taking part in the race on her wheelchair. Unexpected situation again. Therefore, we are using despite. So far, despite has been the first word. Let's see how this works. Despite her, noun form of disabled. Despite her disability, comma, Rachel is taking part in the race on her wheelchair. Do not forget the name. A lot of people miss out the name. Question 5. Mr. Goh bought the diamond earrings for his wife, although they were costly. So again, unexpected, super expensive, and yet he bought them. So in this case, despite the fact that the diamond earrings were costly, Mr. Goh bought them for his wife. You can use also the noun form of costly, which is despite the costliness of the diamond earrings, comma, Mr. Goh bought them for his wife. Exercise 2. Yvonne promised to turn over a new leaf. She was still late for school. Okay, so despite promising to turn over a new leaf, comma, Yvonne was still late for school. Aisha is unable to overcome her stage fright, so she gets very nervous when she goes on stage. Yeah, she has gone through several intensive speech and drama training sessions. So this is unexpected, isn't it? Having gone through all these sessions, why was she still unable to overcome her stage fright? Okay, so despite having gone through, all right, despite having gone through several intensive speech and drama training sessions, comma, do not forget the name, Aisha is unable to overcome her stage fright. Terry Fox has a prosthetic leg. He completed a cross-country marathon. So if you Google his name, you will find out his story. Anyway, despite having a prosthetic leg, comma, Terry Fox completed a cross-country marathon. So it must have been very difficult. Next, Joshua remained calm even though the pressure from his friends was great. So despite the great pressure, so there's a bit of a manipulation of the words here, right? Despite the great pressure from his friends, comma, Joshua remained calm. Farouk lit a few candles. He still could not see well in the dark. So despite lighting a few candles, comma, Farouk still could not see well in the dark. Exercise 3, we have despite not being the first word anymore, but in the middle of the sentence. Let's see. I visited Melanie at the hospital, although it was raining heavily. I visited Melanie at the hospital despite the heavy rain. So again, word change. Jason knows who stole the examination papers. He does not want to review anything. Well, let's go. Despite the fact that Jason knows who stole the examination papers, he does not want to review anything. Alternatively, you can say, despite knowing, ing, despite knowing who stole the examination papers, comma, do not write he, Jason does not want to review anything. Megan decided to take up the job although the salary was low. So despite the low salary, comma, Megan decided to take up the job. Alternatively, despite the fact that the salary was low, comma, Megan decided to take up the job despite the fact that the salary was low. Mary was determined to complete the obstacle course. She was afraid of heights. So despite her fear of heights, so again, word change, Mary was determined to complete the obstacle course. Alternatively, despite the fact that she was afraid of heights, comma, Mary was determined to complete the obstacle course. Lola speaks French fluently. However, she cannot get along with her French neighbors. So we are supposed to use the word despite again, right? So let's go. Lola, all right? So this has to be an L actually. Lola cannot get along with her neighbors. There you go, fixed it, okay? Despite the fact that she speaks French fluently. Siti had a fever. She refused to see a doctor. So the answer is, despite the fact that Siti had a fever, she refused to see a doctor. Or you can say, despite having a fever, Siti refused to see a doctor. Sarah was anxious. She managed to emerge overall champion for the competition. So despite her anxiety, or despite the fact that she was anxious, comma, Sarah managed to emerge overall champion for the competition. So question 3, we don't have a name here, we're just using she. She attended her graduation ceremony, she was very late, okay? She attended her graduation ceremony despite being very late, or despite the fact that she was very late. There was a heavy thunderstorm. They continued their search for the missing hiker. So despite the heavy thunderstorm, they continued their search for the missing hiker. Next, we played tennis even though it rained. So we played tennis despite the fact that it rained, or despite the rain. Exercise 5, Sasikala cannot write in Tamil though she has studied the language for a year. So despite the fact that Sasikala has studied Tamil for a year, she cannot write in the language. Alternatively, despite having studied Tamil for a year, comma, she cannot write in the language. It was raining heavily, but we managed to complete the hike. Despite the heavy rain, comma, we managed to complete the hike. Tom left his house early. He still missed the bus. So despite leaving his house early, Tom still missed the bus. Also acceptable, despite the fact that Tom left his house early, comma, he still missed the bus. Amelia was anxious. She managed to beat the competition. So despite being anxious, or despite the fact that she was anxious, or despite her anxiety, that's also fine, okay? Amelia managed to beat the competition. So alternative answer, despite her anxiety. There you go. He has fallen from the tree many times. He still wants to climb the tree. Okay, so despite falling from the tree many times, he still wants to climb it. Do not have to repeat the tree. Or despite having fallen from the tree many times, comma, he still wants to climb it. Another way to express an unexpected situation is although or even though. So George studied hard for the test, you expect him to do well, right? But he scored poorly, so that's unexpected. So anyway, George scored poorly although he studied hard for the test. The car was parked in the secured garage. It was broken into, so that's unexpected. So the car was broken into although it was parked in the secured garage, or some people say garage. Mariah is hardworking but grumpy. Although Mariah is hardworking, she is grumpy. So she produces results in the team, but she's probably not the nicest person to work with. Tom had an extra ruler. He did not lend it to Susan. So although Tom had, oh my goodness, this should be definitely in the past tense. So although Tom had an extra ruler, he did not lend it to Susan. Ali worked through the night preparing the project. He had a severe cold. Oh no. So Ali worked through the night preparing the project, although he had a severe cold. Question 1, ignore the word not over there. So she was frail, as in she was weak, but she could lift the crate. Well, that's unexpected. If she was weak, how come she could lift the crate? So, although she was frail, she could lift the crate. Peter had tricked Lindsay many times before. She still believed him though. Alright, so although Peter had tricked Lindsay many times before, she still believed him. Rahim had a fever. Rahim turned up for the volleyball practice. So Rahim turned up for the volleyball practice with a C, by the way. He had a fever, although he had a fever. Mark seemed to be losing the match. He refused to give up. So Mark refused to give up, although he seemed to be losing the match. Bella was extremely tired. She continued working. Bella continued working, although she was extremely tired. Exercise 3. Jack finished his lunch. He did not find it tasty. Jack finished his lunch, although he did not find it tasty. So he ate food that he didn't really enjoy. Ravi does not have a tutor. He is able to do well in English. Although Ravi does not have a tutor, he is able to do well in English. Jane chose to wear a shocking red party dress. She was attending a funeral. Although Jane was attending a funeral, she chose to wear a shocking red party dress. So red is not exactly the color you should wear to a funeral. My sister is a shy girl. She's one of the top debaters in her school. So she's not shy on the stage though. Although my sister is a shy girl, she is one of the top debaters in her school. Karen was wearing a thick jacket, but she was still cold. Although Karen was wearing a thick jacket, she was still cold. Uncle Tom went to work. He was not feeling well. Uncle Tom went to work, though he was not feeling well. So it's kind of like although, isn't it? Halim has not returned the library books. The librarian reminded him several times. So Halim has not returned to the library books, even though the librarian reminded him several times. The children were very tired. They insisted on finishing their homework. So although the children were very tired, they insisted on finishing their homework. James does not like the smell of durians. He likes to eat them. So James likes to eat durians, although he does not like the smell of them. Mr. Goh is a very wealthy businessman. He leads a simple life. So although Mr. Goh is a very wealthy businessman, he leads a simple life. Exercise 5. He has been in France for 3 years, but he cannot speak French. Even though he has been in France for 3 years, he cannot speak French. Lucas was very sleepy. He finished his homework. Lucas finished his homework, although he was very sleepy. Michael did not take off his jacket. It was warm in the room. So although it was warm in the room, Michael did not take off his jacket. That's unexpected. Billy had a fever. He turned up for the soccer practice. So although Billy had a fever, he turned up for the soccer practice. Peter continued swimming. It was raining heavily. So although it was raining heavily, Peter continued swimming. Another way to express unexpected situations, in spite of. Let's see how they work. The weather was bad. The camera crew still filmed the scene outdoors. So in spite of the bad weather, the camera crew still filmed the scene outdoors. Daniel was given 3 weeks to complete his assignment. He did not hand it in. So generous amount of time, yet did not submit it on time. So in spite of the fact that Daniel was given 3 weeks to complete his assignment, he did not hand it in. The movie had a poor review. Tickets for the movie were sold out for months. My goodness. So many people were keen on watching a bad movie, supposedly, by the reviewers. And here we go. In spite of the fact that the movie had a poor review, tickets for it were sold out for months. Another way to write this would be in spite of a poor review, tickets for the movie were sold out for months. Question 4. Although Nancy was blind, she could play the piano. In spite of the fact that Nancy was blind, she could play the piano. Or in spite of being blind. Okay, in spite of being blind, Nancy could play the piano. Sarah was in a bad mood. She greeted the customers with a smile. So in spite of the fact that Sarah was in a bad mood, she greeted the customers with a smile. In spite of exercise 2, Francine studied several years in Beijing. She has difficulty speaking Mandarin. Francine has difficulty speaking Mandarin in spite of having studied several years in Beijing. He was tired. He carried on doing his work. So in spite of being tired, or in spite of his tiredness, he carried on doing his work. The old lady was poor, yet he donated $20 to charity. So in spite of the fact that the old lady was poor, or in spite of being poor, the old lady donated $20 to charity. There you go. In spite of being poor. We warned Jianlong Jianlong left the tent without his torch. So in spite of our warning, word change here, okay, comma, Jianlong left the tent without his torch. Although Mr. Wee is generous to others, he does not spend much on himself. So in spite of his generosity, word change, to others, comma, Mr. Wee does not spend much on himself. And exercise 3, a huge crowd came to watch the soccer match even though it was raining heavily. So in spite of the heavy rain, or in spite of the fact that it was raining heavily, well, personally I prefer this, it's slightly shorter. So in spite of the heavy rain, a huge crowd came to watch the soccer match. The alarm clock rang continuously. Peter did not wake up. So in spite of the fact that the alarm clock rang continuously, comma, Peter did not wake up. Alternatively, you can say something like, in spite of the alarm clock's continuous ringing. Well, that's a bit, that's word change right there. So in spite of the alarm clock's continuous ringing. The stadium was filled with spectators even though it was raining heavily during the rugby match this afternoon. So the stadium was filled with spectators in spite of the heavy rain during the rugby match this afternoon. The weather was extremely hot. We enjoyed ourselves at the All-Star Games Carnival. So we enjoyed ourselves at the All-Star Games Carnival in spite of the fact that the weather was extremely hot. Or in spite of the extremely hot weather. That's fine as well. Muthu stayed out late although his mother objected. So in spite of his mother's objection, comma, Muthu stayed out late. Exercise 4. The foreign workers toil very hard. They work very hard. They find it difficult to make ends meet. So hardworking but still not making enough money to be comfortable. So in spite of the foreign workers toiling very hard, comma, they find it difficult to make ends meet. Although Jerome had stage fright, he put up a wonderful performance. So in spite of his stage fright, comma, Jerome put up a wonderful performance. John is afraid of water. He took his family on a cruise. So in spite of his in spite of his fear of water, comma, John took his family on a cruise. Mr. Ang's health is poor. However, he rarely takes a day off work. So in spite of his poor health, so word change here, Mr. Ang rarely takes a day off work. Sean had injured his ankle but managed to complete the race. So Sean managed to complete the race in spite of the fact that he had injured his ankle. Exercise 5. The sisters were late for school. They woke up early that day. So the sisters were late for school in spite of them waking up early that day. The children were noisy. Tom could study effectively in his room. Okay, so in spite of the noisy children, alternatively, in spite of the fact that the children were noisy, okay, personally, I prefer this. Okay, in spite of the noisy children, Tom could study effectively in his room. The bicycle was damaged. It was sold for a high price. So in spite of the fact that the bicycle was damaged, comma, it was sold for a high price. Maybe it belonged to a famous person, or it's a very rare edition. Now, this restaurant is old but popular. Must be delicious food then. So this restaurant is popular in spite of the fact that it is old, or in spite of being old. My grandmother is 90 but fit as a fiddle, so she's still very healthy. Okay, my grandmother is fit as a fiddle in spite of being 90, or in spite of the fact that she is 90. So that's it, the end of despite and in spite of and although. Okay, hope you found this useful. Have a great day.